Welcome, friends. Welcome to this live stream for Empty Cloud Monastery. A very good day to you. I'd like to begin as usual by paying homage to our teacher, the Buddha. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato sama sambuddhassa. Buddhang dhammang sanghang namasami. So the topic for today's Dharma session is the topic of joy. The Buddha's teachings on Somanassa. Somanassa is a joyful mental feeling. And of course, this is an enormous topic. I thought I'd break it down into examining, investigating the Buddha's teachings on joy in terms of the path. In terms of the three main divisions of path, that is the Sila, Samadhi and Panya aspects of the path. And I've chosen some excerpts from various teachings of the Buddha to explore this topic. Joy, of course, is a product, you could say a byproduct in a way of the path of practice. Joy can also be experienced in mundane ways, through pleasant experiences with this body and mind in this life. So there's a distinction made in the Buddha's teachings between coarse pleasures, you could say, sense pleasures, and more spiritual experiences of joy and well-being. The former being transient, unreliable, subject to change, and hence, tinged with suffering. And the latter being more reliable, more consistent, a sort of accumulation, if you like, or a manifestation of joy that grows on the spiritual path, on the path of practice, and is to be experienced for each person. And so let's look at joy, friends, today. And I'll begin with joy in relation to Sila, this third part of the Noble Eightfold Path. So the Sila, Samadhi and Panya are developed on the Noble Eightfold Path. Let's look at Sila and how there can be joy in relation to virtue. So there's a very helpful sutta on this topic, which is Majjhima 129. It's called Bala Pandita Sutta. It's about foolish and wise people and distinguishing between the two. And you can imagine a foolish person is one who is sort of stubbornly maintaining a life of hedonistic pleasure, cultivating mundane pleasures and ignoring the bigger picture, ignoring the trajectory of life, ignoring the afterlife if there is one, and not really coming out of ignorance or suffering in this way. The wise person is a person who's cultivating spiritual path. In terms of virtue, we have these teachings here. I'd like to read to you from the sutta. So the Buddha says here, there are these three characteristics, signs, and manifestations of a wise person. The Pali word for a wise person is pandita. A pandit is, there's a sense of scholarly person, a learned person, an astute person. What are the characteristics, the signs and manifestations of a wise person? And here the Buddha says, a wise person experiences 3 kinds of pleasure and happiness in this very life. And he gives these 3 examples of one who cultivates the good and can rest in that. Firstly, suppose a wise person is sitting in a council hall, a street, or at a crossroads, where people are discussing about what's proper and fitting. Then that wise person thinks, those good things are found in me, and I exhibit them. This is the first kind of pleasure, joy and happiness a wise person experiences in this very life. So when we live an upright life, we can gather that and experience for ourselves that there's a kind of moral confidence that we have, isn't there, friends? We can feel secure in our avoidance of harm, avoidance of unwholesome behavior or speech, and cultivating, letting go of unwholesome thoughts. There's a confidence that we can feel, a sense of well-being, so that when other people are talking about what is wholesome, what is good, we can feel, yeah, I'm in that category. I'm a person who cultivates the good. Equally, the next example the Buddha gives here is a wise person sees that the kings, the leaders, have arrested a bandit, a criminal, and subjected them to various punishments. So seeing somebody being punished for crimes they've committed, a wise person thinks, those things are not found in me, and I do not exhibit them. This is the second kind of joy and happiness a wise person can experience in this very life. So this is really pointing to not moral superiority, not to raise ourselves up and put down those who've fallen into harmful behaviors. We can only have compassion for them, but to recognize that we're experiencing blamelessness. We're free from fear when we are living a wholesome life and avoiding any kind of harm. And so there's joy in this, and we can notice for ourselves as we practice and follow the 5 precepts or more precepts, how we can begin to feel more secure. We're living a more blameless life, and that is something we can really enjoy. We can feel the joy of that. The third example the Buddha gives in this sutta goes like this. When a wise person's resting on a chair or on a bed or on the ground, their past good deeds, good conduct of body, speech and mind, settle down upon them, rest down upon them, and lay down upon them. It is like the shadow of a great mountain peak in the evening, as it settles down, rests down, and lays down upon the earth. Then that wise person thinks, well, I haven't done bad things, violence and sin. I've done good and skillful things that keep me safe. When I pass away, I'll go to a place where people who've done such things go. I won't be sorrowing, wailing, and lamenting, falling into confusion. When this body breaks up after death, there'll be a rebirth in a good place, a heavenly realm. So there is, again, this joy in the virtue that we have accumulated over the life. If we live an upright life, a wholesome life. And it's a beautiful image, isn't it? This mountain where the sun's setting and the shadow of the mountain falls upon the land and rests there, envelops that area. That sense of the goodness, the joy of good living, wholesome life is something that can envelop us, can hold us, can be like a safety blanket for us, keeping us warm, keeping us free from danger. And the sense of the future, if we think about the future at all, is something not so frightening or anxiety making. Rather, there's a sense of, well, I've done my best, I've lived as well as I could. I've struggled perhaps at times to maintain virtue and overcome many temptations, perhaps turned away from many unwholesome possibilities. It's not been easy necessarily. There's a sense of having done well. And so this sense of the future is also one imbued with fearlessness. Don't have to worry about the karma and where it leads. As much as we can be safe, we're safe in our moral sort of standpoint, in the goodness that has been done, that is being done, and that we are cultivating in the future. So this sutta is really pointing to the security, the safety for a wise person of practicing sila, practicing virtue. So this is one of the ways, friends, in which we can feel joy. We can cultivate joy. If we're not feeling good about the ways we're behaving and manifesting in the world, then we can cultivate harmlessness and notice, the product, the byproduct of virtue is this joy, is this sense of contentment and calm and peace that can steal upon us. So this is the first way in which we can experience mental joy, through practicing sila. Looking at samadhi practice and how this also brings so much mental joy and well-being for us. There's a very beautiful sutta in Majjhima Atthakkanagara Sutta, number 52. Here Ananda's speaking. He's speaking to a man called Dasama. And this person asks Ananda, what are the ways to the deathless? Can you explain to me a way to nirvana, a way to liberation? And Ananda in this sutta doesn't just give Dasama one way of experiencing freedom from suffering, but 11 doorways to the deathless. So this is a very beautiful sutta. And last week I was speaking about the jhana. And here Ananda tells Dasama, well, if you cultivate meditation, practice, and practice the jhana 1 to 7, also practicing the Brahmaviharas, the 4 Brahmaviharas, loving kindness, compassion, joy, mudita, and equanimity. These 4 practices also lead to great joy, great well-being in the mind, in the heart. So there are these 11 doorways, the first 4 jhana and the arupa jhana, the 3 formless ways of experiencing great one-pointedness of mind and insight. And the important point about each of these is that Ananda is telling Dasama the jhana themselves and the Brahmavihara practices, dwelling in loving kindness, compassion, joy, and equanimity, in and of themselves, they enable great joy to be experienced in the mind, in the heart. But the truly wise person recognizes that all these meditations, all these ways of absorbing the mind, to experience great joy are nevertheless conditioned. They're volitionally produced. We set the conditions, we enter and we emerge from these states due to causes and conditions that have been set up. We take ourselves to quiet places, free our minds from all the clutter, let go of the hindrances, and then we can dwell in these states of great joy, of great bliss. But they are subject to change. They are not reliable. And so in this way, a wise person doesn't hold to this kind of joy, this kind of well-being. The joy of samadhi and also the joy of virtue are both transient, unreliable. And so ultimately we want to gravitate towards the joy of wisdom, friends, the joy of insight. So this is what I'm going to talk about now. The joy of really applying the teachings of the Buddha, applying right view to our practice. And there are a couple of suttas that I want to bring in to explore this aspect of the joy that we can experience through cultivation of wisdom, of panya, this aspect of the Eightfold Path. So first of all, I'm going to speak a little bit about Majjhima 137, Slayatana Vibhanga Sutta. This is an exploration of the six senses. And in this sutta, the Buddha speaks about the joy that we can experience through the six senses. This described as household joy, domestic happiness. That is the joy that is mundane, the joy that we can experience through sight, sound, smells, taste, touches, and thoughts. This joy is, of course, transient, of course, subject to conditions. It is an unreliable kind of joy. The Buddha goes on to speak about the 6 kinds of renunciant joy. So the joy that can be experienced through insight. And that is, he says, there are these 6 kinds of renunciant happiness. When you have understood the impermanence of sight, sound, smells, tastes, touches, and thoughts, when you've understood their perishing and fading away and cessation, then happiness arises, joy arises, as you truly understand, through right understanding, that both formerly and now, all these things are impermanent. All these experiences are inherently suffering. They are perishable. Anicca, dukkha, viparinama. Changing, unsatisfactory, and falling away. So the joy, the renunciant joy, in relation to the 6 senses, is this understanding of anicca, anatta, dukkha, you could say. The truth of the way things are. And this gives a joy in the heart, does it not, friends? To contemplate the Buddha's teachings, to apply them to our experience, to see how things are constantly changing, inherently unsatisfactory, therefore, not self, therefore. Everything's falling away, arising and passing. To see in this way, we can experience renunciant joy. And then in this sutta, the Buddha goes on to say, we can allow this renunciant joy, the joy of insight, to enable us to let go of the mundane joy of sense delights. Because it's a joy so much more profound, so much more reliable, more continuous. It can be like a baseline for us over time. And also, this renunciant joy of insight, we can also use to eclipse, to do away with, to overcome any kind of renunciant sadness. Sometimes we may feel this path is so long, I'm not really getting anywhere. It's 2 steps forwards, 1 step, 3 steps back, rather. 3 steps back. It's so hard. I struggle so much to let go of what I know I should be able to let go of, but I can't. We can feel very dissatisfied with our progress. We can feel a yearning for the goal. Oh, if only I could just understand, break through all the fetters, the hindrances, and experience Nibbana for myself. I'm so tired of learning about it, reading about it, but not actually experiencing peace, and so forth. We can feel a lot of sadness in this quite wholesome way, actually. The sadness of realizing dukkha, realizing where we're at. There's a lot of value in this kind of sadness, but we can allow the renunciant joy, the joy of insight, to overcome these aspects of renunciant sadness. And then in this sutta, the Buddha goes on to say, we can experience, as we develop our insight into anicca, anatta, dukkha, we can begin to move towards equanimity. So from joy to equanimity. And this is the way a wise heart moves. There can be great joy in the practice, joy in insight. This is a joy that we can enjoy, that we can make much of. But we can also see how over time, this joy, this mental joy, settles. It is let go of for the greater benefit and well-being of equanimity, of peace, of steadiness, stillness of the heart. And so in this sutta, there's this pointing to the destination for joy, the natural development of spiritual joy, morphing into spiritual equanimity, upekkha. And there's another sutta I'd like to share with you, read out. It's a short sutta from Anguttara Nikaya, Book of Sixes. This was a sutta that Joseph, our friend, requested that I look at some point and share. This is a lovely sutta. Anguttara 678. And it goes like this, friends. It's called Sukha Somanassa Sutta, Happiness and Joy Sutta. The Buddha said, mendicants, when one has 6 things, they're full of joy and happiness in this very life. And they have laid the groundwork for ending the defilements. It is when a mendicant enjoys the teachings, the Dhamma, meditation, bhavana, giving up, pahana, seclusion, paviveka, kindness, abhyapaja, and non-proliferation, nipapancha. So these 6 things that lead to joy and happiness in our practice. The Buddha says when one possesses these 6 things, they are full of joy and happiness in this very life, and they've laid the groundwork for ending the defilements. So friends, these joys are liberative joys. They're joys that are pointing, inclining, leading us towards Nibbana. So it's really interesting to look at these. These are joys that we want to cultivate. These are joys to be enjoyed. These are benefits of the practice that will lead us forward in a good way. The Dhamma, first of all, to enjoy the teaching. Can we enjoy the Dhamma teachings? Can we make much of them? Can we incline our minds, more and more to appreciation of the Dhamma, to even if, we're not that interested in the teachings, there's a more interest in reading novels or watching movies or doing other things that feel more entertaining for us. Can we consider that there can be a cultivation of joy in the Dharma teachings and give some time every day to take them in? I hardly need to say that to anybody who's watching because that's what you're doing anyway. But it is something to consider, even when we feel disinclined, to let ourselves have a practice of what the Christians would call lectio, divine reading, to give time every day for this. And in this way, as we incline our hearts toward the Dharma teachings, we can notice how much they benefit and nourish the heart over time, and begin to feel great enjoyment, great joy in taking in the Dharma teachings. And the second of these 6 things that lead to joy and happiness here and now, and also ongoing, in an ongoing way, meditation, bhavana. So coming back and considering again these 11 doors to the deathless that Ananda was speaking about, to Dasama, these ways we can develop our meditation, cultivate the mind, be willing to put aside desire and grief for the world, be willing to make time every day to seclude ourselves, to sit quietly or take up whatever posture is comfortable and sustainable and doesn't incline us to sleepiness, and to allow the mind to quieten, to pay attention to the body, to observe the breath, to, if we do observe thinking arising and passing, be the observer and not to get lost and immersed in the processes, in the topics, in the movie. To have that objectivity. If we don't have that objectivity in relation to our thinking, then to come back to the body, come back to the earth, come back to the breath. So to cultivate meditation is to cultivate relaxing, quietening the mind, ultimately stilling the mind, and to begin to practice the jhana, letting go of any distraction, just being present for an object, whatever our object of meditation might be. Cultivating the jhana, also we can cultivate loving kindness, we can cultivate compassion in relation to suffering here and suffering in the world around us. Let's remember, we have this cultivation of compassion to ease our way, to help us to relate skillfully to the suffering. There's also the cultivation of joy, where the conditions are present for that, and the cultivation of equanimity. Equanimity is like having the bigger picture, stepping back from experience and seeing the sort of endless ups and downs of samsara from a place of wisdom, considering anicca, anatta, dukkha in relation to all our experience, how it's changing, how it is all suffering, and how it is impersonal. And in these ways, we cultivate our meditation practice. And keep it simple. If that sounds complicated, we don't need to complicate anything in our meditation. Let it be simple. Simply observe the breath, the body, any kind of an object that is steady for us. And so we find joy in our meditation practice when we apply ourselves, give time, have a discipline, have like a routine of meditation practice as well as Dharma study. To have these 2 in our lives is such a joy when we allow ourselves the space and time for these gifts, these great supports for the heart, for the mind. So these are the first 2 things that lead to joy and happiness right now and ongoing. The next the Buddha gives here is pahana, giving up, letting go. How do we experience the joy of letting go? Can you notice when we're able to let go of some train of thought, let go of some desire, let go of aversion, let go of imagination, proliferation? How does it feel when these things fall away? And what's left? That sense of, relief, relaxation, quietude, peacefulness, the joy of letting go. Can we notice the joy of letting go in terms of giving? When we give things away, when we're generous, with an open heart, with open hands, we give our possessions, our wealth, our thoughts, our ideas, our views and opinions, when we're willing to put them aside, give them out, let them go. How does that feel? And so we can notice in letting go, pahana, there is so much joy, the lightness, the freedom, the space that we can experience. If we don't experience this, if you don't experience what I'm talking about, then we can try giving things, try giving generously, giving dana, try letting go of cherished possessions and see how it feels over time. There is such a sense of freedom that we can experience when we're willing to put aside the things that we hold close, the things that we cherish. It's incredible to be able to do this. It's revolutionary. It changes us. It is transformative. So we can start in this way. But to be willing as we develop our practice to give up literally everything, friends. And the Dharma is so gracious because as we develop our practice, we know what we need to give up next. We get to notice what we're holding on to, whether it's material things or concepts or emotions. We get to notice where the holding is, and there's the opportunity to let go. In our meditation practice, when we're distracted, getting caught up in our history, in the world events, in the emotions in the heart, in our ideas about things, this is where we have the opportunity to let go and to really redirect the attention away from those distractions, back to the object of meditation. Notice the joy, notice the benefit of that. And so in this way we can consider and cultivate the enjoyment, the joy of letting go. And the fourth thing that gives joy and happiness in this life, the Buddha says, is viveka, seclusion. Some people may not relate to the joy of solitude, physical. Some people feel they don't want to be on their own. They want to be with others. And they would miss others terribly if they weren't with them. Others of us, monastic types, love physical solitude, and to be able to be secluded in this way is a source of great joy. But we can consider really that here the Buddha may well be pointing to the deeper seclusion from the defilements, seclusion from the taints, seclusion from Mara, from that which is deluding us, from that which is pulling us away from happiness, trapping us and fettering us, to experience the joy of letting go of the fetters, of the hindrances. And it speaks for itself, isn't it? When we're caught up in struggle around desire, aversion, energy issues, we're anxious, we're restless, or we're soporific, avoidant. These are painful states. And to be able to work with these states, we can acknowledge them, we can bear with them, and then we can see them fade away. And this freedom from the hindrances is clearly a source of great joy. And so this seclusion, I think, is the seclusion we can consider here. There's also the benefit of taking ourselves apart from the rest, from others, and meditating. There is great joy in this possibility for us. But more importantly, let's consider what are we taking with us when we meditate, when we go to quiet places and we have some time alone. We're taking with us all of the clutter in the heart, in the mind, and to be able to be secluded from this, from distraction, from aversion, from desire, from all the obscurations of the mind. And in our meditation practice, as we cultivate the joy of meditation, the joy of learning the Dhammas, so we get a handle on how to cultivate the joy of seclusion also. And then the fifth source of great joy and happiness for us, here the Buddha says, is abhyapaja, is kindness. This points back to the joy of virtue, doesn't it? The joy of goodness, the sort of moral confidence we can feel when we are harmless, when we are helping, the joy of kindness. This is something to really make much of. We can dismiss our small acts of kindness and consideration and think not much of them. But here the Buddha is saying to us, let's enjoy them. Let's enjoy the goodness of our lives. Let's enjoy the kind acts that we perform. Allow them to nourish the heart, and they are leading us towards liberation, is what's being said here. That kindness, goodness are opening the doors for us to be able to meditate, to be able to have a heart that's peaceful enough, calm enough, to be able to develop some insight. And so then inclining towards peace and inclining towards the ultimate freedom from more suffering. So kindness has its place and is to be enjoyed. And finally, the Buddha speaks of non-proliferation as a source of great joy. Nipapancha. This word papancha, proliferation, the Buddha has points to in many places in the suttas as the crazy mind, that we're constantly imagining, embellishing, and making much of our delusion, are getting caught up in samsara, getting entangled and ensnared, mired in samsara. And so here we can appreciate that there's great joy in letting go of papancha, in non-proliferation. So when we're meditating, we have a lot of distraction in the mind. We're thinking of this, that, and the other. The tendency for us to obsess over things is there. We can remember that all of this is to be let go of. Feel the joy of letting go and feel the joy of non-proliferation. To appreciate that we're creating so much. We're creating suffering, and it's a habit that we've been in for a long time. And this whole practice is encouraging us to notice that, to see how we produce so much and create so much of our worlds, and to let go of that creating. And in this way, of course, we get to, yes, appreciate the joy of non-proliferation. It's also the joy of simplicity, of freedom from all of that, of peace. So I'd like to read again this beautiful sutta and invite you to relax and maybe close the eyes, just sit back And let's hear again these beautiful words from the Buddha. Anguttara 678, Joy and Happiness Sutta. And the Buddha said, when one has 6 things, we are full of joy and happiness in this very life, and we're laying the groundwork for ending the defilements. It's when one enjoys the teachings, the Dhamma, one enjoys meditation, bhavana, one enjoys giving up, letting go, pahana. One enjoys seclusion, paviveka. One enjoys kindness, abhyapaja. And one enjoys non-proliferation, nipapancha. When one possesses these 6 things, they are full of joy and happiness in this very life, and they've laid the groundwork for ending the defilements. Ewa. So this is a liberative joy, a joy imbued with wisdom and insight. And so all these ways, friends, in which we can enjoy our lives, enjoy the practice, see where the joy comes from, recognize that joy comes from goodness, from sila, these aspects of the path. Joy comes from mental development, bhavana, meditation, cultivation of the mind-heart. And joy comes from wisdom, from insight, seeing things as they are. And in these 6 ways that we're given in this beautiful sutta in Anguttara Nikaya, we can see how the joy flows and inclines us towards nibbana. The joy of teachings, meditation, letting go, seclusion, kindness, and non-proliferation. So I'll finish here on this beautiful topic of joy, which quite naturally brings a lot of joy to the heart. I hope that's the case for you too. And even if it doesn't, that's okay. Because often when we focus on these positives, focus on metta, loving kindness, or joy, or well-being, if we focus on these things as a teaching or as an aspect of our meditation practice, they may be present and cultivating at such a time, or we may have a chance to really shine the light on anything that's not joyful, that's not well, any suffering that's present for us. So it's like we get to highlight the work that is to be done in this moment, whether we're cultivating the joy or whether we're noticing the suffering. Either way, we can appreciate there is a insight, opportunity, to any of these Dharma teachings. We don't have to agree with them. We don't have to tune in with them. Not at all. But we can notice what's actually happening for us right now. And let that be the Dharma of the day, So friends, thank you for your presence on the live stream, those who are actually here at this point. Greetings, Gregory, Rebecca, Jayantha, Geeta, Madeline, good afternoon. John, Edward, Norma, good morning. It's a joy to be here with you, Norma. She says, a joy to be here, absolutely. Joy in Sangha too, which has not been mentioned in these teachings, but that is something we can also consider, the joy of Sangha, of our spiritual community, brothers and sisters practicing together. Hi Richard, hi Manal, hi Maria. Hi Niranjan from Nepal. Niranjan is from the Buddha's birthplace. How auspicious is that? What a joy in that. Niranjan, I am so happy for you that you can walk in the places where the Buddha walked, that you live in those places. How beautiful is that? May that bring great inspiration, as I'm sure it does. Hi, John and Usha, Niranjan, Bhumika, Japal Sin, Burmese friend, Amarantha. So I'm just going through to see if there's any comments, questions, or reflections. And I can see John has a reflection question. Thank you, John. And he says, having done bad things by way of body, speech, and mind, when their body breaks up after death, they're reborn in a place of loss, a bad place, the underworld, hell. This passage in Majjhima 129. Question. The Buddha suggests in the above passage that there exists an all-seeing God. Is this correct? Thank you. Thank you, John. John's really highlighting also, which I appreciate, that in Majjhima 129, there's the wise person, and I've focused on that aspect of the sutta. But the Buddha also speaks about the foolish person and the unfortunate consequences, of unskillful thoughts, words, and deeds. Of course, that they lead to suffering in the future. And the Buddha actually goes into quite some detail about the kinds of sufferings that one can experience in the hell realms. So it's all very salutary stuff, and recommend reading the whole sutta, friends, to appreciate what we're talking about here. But John, yes, there is the hell realms, there are the heaven realms. This really chimes in with other religious traditions that also have these concepts of the good destination, the unfortunate destination. We have this in Buddhism, yes. We also have the gods in Buddhism. There is an all-seeing God, indeed. There is the overlord, spoken about in the Buddhist cosmology and in the suttas in places. The overlord, who is the god of gods, if you like. The Buddha, of course, came from Indian wisdom traditions, now loosely called Hinduism, where there's an understanding that there are there's whole pantheons of gods. There's levels of godliness, of radiance, of brightness, of omniscience, omnipresence. And in Buddhism, we have the 31 planes of existence. There are many Brahma realms, Deva realms, higher realms of existence to this human realm. And they are ascending in order of, there's an increasing radiance and increasing reach of the heart, the mind of such beings. And so, yes, we are, in a way, all connected within samsara. One can go from the highest to the lowest and back again. If we appreciate the Buddha's teaching that samsara is beginningless and endless, we can consider the possibility that we've been everywhere. We've been in the highest realms, we've been in the lowest realms. We may have some appreciation of that, even in this lifetime, in our practice, in our meditation, in our lives. We can experience states of great distress, burning anger, hatred, confusion, quite hellish states of mind. And we can also experience very blissful states. We've been talking about joy today. That's a very heavenly experience for a human being, to open to joy. The devas, the gods particularly, we're told, dwell in perpetual states of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. One could also say these are the natural states of the mind. But here you're asking, is there an overlord? Is there a supreme God? In a way, yes, in Buddhism there is. And we can align with that God. We can fall in line in samsara, and we can benefit ourselves through considering the values and the attitudes and the practices that may connect us with the heavenly realms and the heavenly beings. And those ways and attitudes and practices are the practices of goodness, cultivation of love, compassion, joy, and equanimity. And so we can make much of those qualities. And indeed, making much of those qualities helps us also to break free from samsara, because they're the qualities that really open the heart to insight. But there is something beyond this settling for samsara, even the best that it has to offer. And the reason that we are compelled to do this as people who understand the Dharma is that even if we were to worship the gods and to aspire to fall in line and to be like the higher beings, to be in a way under their sway through practicing in these good ways and developing these good qualities, yet we will miss the opportunity, the potential that we have to do something so much more bright and wholesome, and to free our hearts from suffering. So rather than worshipping gods and aspiring to be like gods and to be reborn in higher planes of existence, more beneficial in the limited time that we have to focus on Nibbana, to breaking free, to letting go of attachment to any kind of existence whatsoever. And so in this way we can see that, yeah, in Buddhism there are gods, but we don't want to use our energy in following the gods, worshipping the gods, giving up our responsibility to the gods, praying to the gods, and so forth. Thank you, John. I hope that meets your question. And Niranjan says, I know third stage of meditation, joy, priti, sukha. Yeah, that's a classic, way in which people consider joy in the practice is the joy that we experience through the jhana. And particularly what is defined as joy in the jhana practice. Piti is more like, I'd say, rapture. Somanassa, this mental joy, we can experience in all of the jhana, any of the jhana. There is great well-being and great mental peace and happiness and joyfulness. But classically in the first jhana, developing into the second jhana and let go of in the third and fourth jhana is this rapture, piti, and then happiness, sukha, which are both mental and also physical experiences. So the first 3-4 jhana, there is mental joy in this way of piti, sukha, and also physical well-being and rapture and joy and bliss. And then in the arupa jhana, there is still great mental well-being and joy, but there is no longer any physical experience. So I would say all the jhana and also the Brahmaviharas are states of joy for us in our meditation practice. But yeah, the definitions of these jhana are very interesting to study and consider. What is the first jhana, the second, the third? What are the factors that are present and that are let go of as each jhana progresses to the next? I spoke about the jhanas last week. There's also so much one can read up on the jhana. And most importantly, let's cultivate our meditation practice so that we can really develop this one-pointedness of mind, the stillness, and let the jhana be experienced here. Thanks, Niranjan. And John says, Bhagavad Gita, verse 20, I am the self, O Gudas Kisa, Gudar Kesa, Kesha, Gudar Kesha. I am the self, O Gudakesha, seated in the hearts of all creatures. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. Yeah, that's God's statement. Thank you, John. I am the self in the hearts of all creatures, the beginning, the middle, and the end. It's really beautiful, actually. Just considering, the fullness, that is almost like an expression of the fullness of samsara. The best that samsara can offer is the highest realms of experience, divine abidings. And they are, the sense of time is endless. Beings in these God realms, we're told in the Buddhist tradition, are not able to consider anything other than the place that they find themselves in, because time is so, they're there. They seem to be immortal. There's no sense of aging or mortality whatsoever. And yet, after an exceedingly long period of time, I think of it as like the planets, the suns. They're like stars, perhaps. In the physical realm, we could compare the gods to beings like stars that last for just way beyond our human comprehension. The length of time in which they exist, and they're burning brightly, and yet, even the stars come to an end. And so it is that even the gods are within samsara, and their life comes to an end eventually. And when that happens, it happens very quickly. And there's only one direction that they can experience the change in, and that is a degradation, a downfall, if you like. There's a fall into another situation, because samsara rolls on, and all beings are changing their states endlessly. So even though there's a vast expansion of time in the higher realms of experience, yet all beings have a life. All beings arise, last for some time, however long it is, and then pass away. And the gods have to experience this ending. And yet here we see the expression of God, a godlike expression. I am the beginning, the middle, and the end of all beings. Story goes in Hinduism that Brahma is the first being to appear in any new universe, we could say. With the birth of a universe, there's a birth of that consciousness. And so that consciousness then watches and observes all the other beings coming into existence in all the other realms of, all the other planes of existence. And so, because they see all of that manifesting, and they have that overview, they can see all of samsara, beginning, middle, and end. They are convinced that they're the creator of all of that. But the truth, in fact, is that they are also subject to the laws of karma, and it just so happens that they appeared when they appeared, and that they have the mind that they have for this time. And then eventually that karma's used up, the life comes to an end, and there's a rebirth elsewhere. And so it goes on. And so this is the danger for us. If we aspire to godlike realms of existence, heavenly realms, then we will enjoy for a very long time. But then eventually that joy must come to an end, because the nature of samsara, as we know, is anicca, anatta, dukkha. It's constantly changing. Nothing is static. Nothing stays the same. But the gods will feel otherwise, and only receive the Dhamma, the truth will only dawn on them at the end of that existence. Yeah, there's so much more I could say, but time is limited. So yeah, I'll stop there. Thank you, John, for bringing that in. That's a beautiful quote. Very interesting to consider. And just to see if there's anything else. No, that's wonderful. Okay, friends, Thank you for your kind attention and all good wishes for your practice. May we all enjoy the fruits of the practicing the Noble Eightfold Path. Enjoy the Sila, enjoy Samadhi, enjoy developing wisdom and insight. And may we all incline our hearts towards the complete peace and freedom that is Nibbana. Let's conclude with 3 heartfelt sadhus to our teacher, the Buddha. Sadhu, 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 anumodami.